Guys, welcome back. It is Racer X, and I am actually back with my buddies at Clay Cooley Dodge Jeep Chrysler Ram, which is in Irving, Texas. Done a lot of videos with these guys, and they are fantastic. They actually gave me their service bay to film a little video for you guys that I've actually kind of been looking forward to, and had a lot of folks lately asking me, Racer X, look, you don't give the V6 enough love. Well, I've been trying to do that very thing, and today I'm going to do just that once again. And this time I'm actually going to talk about the mods that you can do to the V6, whether it be the GT or the SXT. I did my research, and I want to talk a little bit about the mods that are out there for this car. So it should be a fun one. Also, guys, if you are new to the channel, make sure you slap the subscribe button. Also, make sure you hit the notification bell for more great content, and also make sure you hit me up on Instagram. And here we go. We got the 1,000 horsepower helmet. God. So right behind me, I have two really nice looking cars. As you can see right here, I do have the Challenger GT. These are both 2020s, obviously, brand new. And right over here, I do have the Charger SXT. Both of these have that V6 Pentastar power plant. I want to talk a little bit about the power plant that comes in this, and then I want to give you an idea of maybe some of the different modifications that you can do to these cars to make them more fun. So let's talk a little bit about this V6 Pentastar 3.6 liter engine that comes in the SXT or the GT. Certainly this is the base model trim, but this engine still packs a fair amount of punch. We're talking 305 horsepower and 268 pound-feet of torque in this thing. So it still gets down the road just fine. Now this engine is quite a bit different than its cousins, if you will, and say the RT, certainly the Scat Pack and the Hellcat. Here you're looking at a dual overhead cam engine, so certainly a different design there. 4 valves per cylinder in this, and this is a cast aluminum engine versus the iron blocks that you find in a lot of the other Hemis. So certainly a very different engine. Matter of fact, this probably has more similarities, even though it is a V6, to the Coyote engine rather than the other Hemis that are kind of in this family. A very interesting thing to think about. So this thing not only does feature variable valve timing, but also the compression ratio in this is pretty high. It's 11.3 to 1, so certainly higher than the other trim levels. So the first thing I want to talk about when we talk about the SXT or the GT, Charger or Challenger, I want to talk about the mods that you can do to these that really don't require a tune. Literally, you just bolt them on and enjoy. So whether you're adding sound, you're adding additional air to the engine, there are a multitude of different ways to gain horsepower on these by literally just bolting a different part in place. So let's talk about them. Now, one of the first things you notice when you start to research aftermarket parts for the V6 versions of these cars is that there's just not nearly as much out there in terms of what's available on the V6. Yes, they do have stuff, but you have to search for it a little further. And when you look at the big exhaust manufacturers and all the different parts manufacturers out there, it is a little bit remarkable that there's not more out there for the V6. But lucky for us, they do have some offerings. So first I want to obviously talk about the exhaust. Now, exhaust is actually something that they have some pretty fair offerings in. So I actually got my little list here of different exhausts out there. And so check this out. They do have a Borla exhaust that's pretty nice. It is an S-Type, which is actually one of my favorite exhausts. For about $1,400, you can get you an S-Type exhaust. For the V6, they also have a Solo Performance exhaust. That one, you can get the round or the square tips for about $840. You've got a MagnaFlow competition series. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of MagnaFlow. They're one of my sponsors, and that thing actually sounds quite good. And you can do the axle back for like $715, and the full cat back is going to cost you about $1,600, which is on par for the MagnaFlow exhaust. You've got a Flowmaster for that one's actually the American Thunder Flowmaster, about $900 for that one. And I did find AFE Mach Force. Now keep in mind, guys, that one's somewhere about $1,000, and you can go a little bit more depending on the tips. But there are other exhausts out there. I'm only giving you some of what I found. And keep in mind, a lot of exhaust shops can simply weld a muffler in place. And that's not to say you can't also do a mid-muffler delete or a resonator delete. You could do a straight pipe. I've heard them. I'm not a huge fan of it, but that's also an option. So there are lots of options out there when it comes to the V6 and what type of exhaust you want. And exhaust is another one of those things, guys, that is very subjective. So you kind of just have to listen and see what you like and do what's right for you. So obviously one of the most popular mods that you're going to find out there is a cold air intake. And believe it or not, for the SXT and the GT, there are a lot of options in terms of cold air intakes. I researched quite a few. And you can spend anywhere from, say, $90 up to like $450 or $460 on the AFE Momentum. And there's really not a lot of research out there that tells you one performs better than the other. I mean, I found stuff from Engine, certainly AFE, K&N has several different ones, Air Raid has some, you've got Spectre, there's a litany of options when it comes to cold air intakes, even for the V6, and each of those will pick up some power. Now, I can't necessarily say that one is going to pick up more power than the other. Certainly the AFE Momentum is one that has a closed, kind of a closed box system, and it pulls air from the front of the car. Most of these other ones are going to be kind of that open air or conical air filter, so it's going to allow for more air to pass into the engine and probably increase your horsepower just a little bit. And of course, that is one of the first mods that people do. So a lot of options out there for cold air intakes. I can't necessarily tell you which one is the best, but certainly a lot of stuff to choose from. I also want to talk about another mod that I feel like is pretty important. No, it won't add any horsepower, but it will certainly keep your car running right, and that is a catch can. A lot of the catch cans I've seen for this particular model actually mount over here, and they've got a RIPP or Ripp catch can that's actually very nice for $245. You can find it on their site. And then also you've got a BK catch can that will go for about $140. And there's also another option that I found from Billet Technology for about $140, about the same price, and it has lots of options in terms of colors, and basically that will keep that engine nice and clean in terms of getting contaminants and oil into the intake, and certainly a mod that is worth doing and worth looking into. Now, another item that is actually worth noting is the throttle body on this car can be a little bit restrictive, and believe it or not, with a ported throttle body, you can actually pick up a little bit of horsepower. And MMX or Modern Muscle Extreme makes a ported throttle body for this car that you can order right off their website, and I believe it runs about $300, but it is a really nice, easy way to just bolt in some horsepower on this thing. And also they do make a ported intake. Same company, they make ported intakes, both the upper and the lower. You can get ported. It's about $600 to port both the upper and the lower intakes on this car, or you can do each one separately for about $300. So $600 gets you that ported intake, both upper and lower. And as I mentioned, $300 for the MMX 80 millimeter throttle body should net you some decent horsepower. Another item I also want to mention is a lot of times people will bolt headers to their cars, certainly their V8s, and expect to gain some horsepower. Now, on these cars, it really isn't an option because the engine is cast. Essentially, you've got the exhaust manifold cast right there on the engine. So unfortunately, headers are not really an option on this car. I just wanted to go ahead and put that out there. A lot of times people don't think about some of the other performance mods that don't necessarily gain horsepower, such as the brakes and the suspension. Well, believe it or not, you actually have some offerings for the V6 version that are noteworthy, and I want to kind of tell you what those are. So on the suspension, I did a little bit of research, and I did find that they actually have coilovers that will go right on this car from K-Sport. Now, the coilover option is not the cheapest option, certainly very, very nice, but they're about $850 just for a pair to go in the front. So not necessarily the cheapest thing, but fantastic in terms of suspension. So if you want to go all out and get coilovers, you can certainly do that. Now, K-Sport also offers height adjustable springs for this, which are pretty darn cool, and those are about $620 for all four. So certainly if you want to adjust the height in these, it will definitely be worth doing. And then of course they do offer some that are not adjustable. Certainly Bachland, Eibach, they've got some options for like $250 to $300. And then there's also one other from SR Performance that's about $170. So there are lots of different spring options, and believe it or not, most of those will go at least an inch lower to give the vehicle a different stance and a slightly different ride. Something to think about there. And also on the brakes, I do want to mention this, that Brembo and Sparta both have options, 6-piston options that are quite nice. They're about $4,000 though, so they're not the cheapest thing in the world. And we're talking about in the front where most of the braking occurs anyway, so we're not even talking about the rears here. But also there's another one I want to talk about from Bear. It's a 6-piston setup that's actually quite nice for about half the price. It is about $2,000, and also that is a 2-piece rotor drilled and slotted, quite a nice system. So you can find that on Bear's website, and there's also a couple other websites that I'll point down in the description below as well. One other item that I do want to talk about is tuning on these cars. And yes, tuning is very important. So I did already kind of run through a lot of the different mods that you can do without even having a tune on the car. And believe it or not, a good tune will actually add some power and certainly make your car faster, because they can also tune the transmission. Now, I do want to mention, you've got HP tuners out there, and also you have Diablo Sport. So you've got a couple of different options, and they are very different. Certainly with Diablo Sport, they've got packages for right about $1,000. You can order one of their Trinity 2 units and also an unlocked PCM. So you can't get these cars tuned unless you have an unlocked PCM. So they actually give you an extra PCM, and they will give you the unit to actually look real time and see how your vehicle is performing. And most of their tunes are actually intended for, basically stock cars, but you will add a little bit of horsepower by simply plugging that new PCM into your vehicle. And certainly you can make adjustments once you have an unlocked PCM, depending upon what mods you decide to do. HP Tuners is a little bit different. You kind of have to have your own device, and they've got different options there, and you can explore both of those two on their websites. There's no right or wrong. Some tuners prefer HP Tuners. That's the tuner that my tuner uses, and also Diablo. There's nothing wrong with that one as well. So a lot of different options. Like I said, you do have to have your own device with HP Tuners, but they do have some really neat features of that software as well. I can't jump into all of it, but I just wanted to give you kind of the two main tuning softwares that are out there, and you can check those out on their website. I do also want to talk about a couple of really cool products that are very easy to use. One of them is called a taser, which you may or may not be getting ready to get a video from me on here in the next few days. And that one actually is a lot of different things that the taser does. It plugs right into the OBD port. And you can have your fans on, like when you're in the staging lanes. It will change a lot of your fonts in the car. It does light show. It does all sorts of neat stuff. So that thing is about $250 on Z Automotive's website. And then also there's the pedal commander, which is pretty darn cool. It's about $300, and that also plugs into the OBD port. It connects directly to your accelerator, and it actually reduces the amount of time or the lag when you go to press on the accelerator. Doesn't add horsepower, but what it does is it reduces that lag, and it makes the vehicle feel more responsive, more snappy, so to speak. So that's kind of a neat little product to mention as well. And of course, if you really want to go crazy with the power on your V6, the best option is probably the Supercharger offered from RIPP. If you have an 18 and newer, that is pretty much the only option. ProCharger is actually coming out with an option on that as well, but it's not out yet, at least that's my understanding. But the RIPP Supercharger is pretty cool for these. Now, it is a centrifugal force supercharger, kind of like a Vortec, and it produces between 11 and 12 pounds of boost at sea level. And they claim they will get anywhere between 400 and 450 horsepower to the tire, and in the like 360, 365 range in terms of pound-feet of torque. And a lot of people like going to that RIPP Supercharger. Now, do keep in mind, I'm just going to preface this, if you go to that amount of horsepower, keep in mind that there are limits to your drivetrain, your transmission, things like that, so you have to be kind of ready for all of that. But it pretty much comes ready to go. It has a tune already ready to go. Now, you may have to make adjustments to the tune depending upon the other modifications that you have, but certainly a really great option if you want to really boost the horsepower in your V6, but just keep in mind, like I said, you may have some other issues in terms of just beefing up the rest of the car when you go to that power level, because now you're starting to get up there into that Scat Pack power level or even above in some instances, and you just kind of have to be ready for that now. So if you have a 12 to 17 Charger or Challenger SXT, there is one other option out there. It is from Sprintex, and that is actually a Root, a twin screw blower that actually works quite nice. Now, it doesn't make quite as much horsepower as advertised in terms of what compared to the RIPP Supercharger, but it makes power in a different way. It makes a lot more power kind of down low in the RPM band versus a centrifugal force supercharger like the RIPP, which is going to make the horsepower up a little bit higher in the RPM band. But unfortunately, they don't have the options for the 18 all the way up to the current model year. So something to consider there. Well, guys, that is about it for this one. I just wanted to kind of give you a couple of the options that were out there on some of the modifications that you can do to your V6. And as I've always tell you guys, you know, make your car your own, have fun with it. The great thing about the bolt-ons is you can kind of do them in stages, one at a time. They don't need a tune. So as budget dictates, you can add things to your car. Certainly when you go up to a supercharger, you're looking at a big chunk of money all at once, and you're probably going to need some supporting mods. So just be prepared for that, and then also be prepared for the warranty implications. Obviously, you stick a supercharger on there, chances are the warranty is going kaput. But at any rate, lots of different ways to have fun in your V6 Charger or Challenger. So like I said, I will put some of the links down below in the description if you want to see where to find some of these products. And hopefully you guys find this interesting and useful. So anyway, guys, that's about it for this one. I will catch you on the next one. So until then, Racer X.